that intro, guys. I think that was pretty decent. Hey, guys, what's up? My name is Anthony, and welcome to another edition of BNA Sports Talk. It's a sports math episode. I'm not going to bore you guys with a bunch of numbers. I just wanted to see how the different teams of the past 8 years have constructed their team based on cap and different things like that. Sports math is a series I kind of went away from, but yeah, so let's get right into it. Let's get into some spreadsheets and things like that, because I was very curious about positional value and things like that. And this took me a while to do because I realized that the over the cap had some problems with spending. Some players were double counted and then had to go back. So this is dating back all the way to 2013 based on positions: edge rusher, offensive line, wide receiver. It didn't get into depth like interior offensive line, inside linebackers, things like that. It was more vague and more general, but you get a general picture of what a team is constructed like. Okay, so the objective with all this is to see how the Giants are constructing their team based on historical Super Bowl champions. Now, obviously, the league is changing every single year, and we'll highlight that a little bit. So the couple of charts that I made. So the first one, pure spending in that year. Then I did a percentage of that, based on the overall salary cap. Then I also did a percentage based on the actual money that they spent, because some teams don't spend, their total cap. I also did, adjusted for the current salary cap, and I have a chart saying like what these positions would be, spending now. It's not really that useful, but with the current salary cap, how much are they spending? Then I also created a chart of like the averages of all those things under the sun. So it's not really that complicated, but spending $11 million against the cap for a quarterback. The average for a Super Bowl champion adjusted is 15.75. The maximum adjusted is 26.3. So the Giants are well under that. In fact, they are probably the least amount of money spent on any quarterback since, the Seahawks had Russell Wilson on his rookie deal. And then the maximum was 13.3%. I believe that was with the Broncos and Peyton Manning. So you can have an elite guy, but, Peyton Manning wasn't really that good. So that's almost a little bit of an outlier there. But you need a historical veteran, or you need a cheap guy that's going to cost you around 5 to 6% of the cap. Next, let's go into running back. Right now, the Giants are spending $13.5 million against the cap in running back. The average is 9.1, so we're a little bit above there. The Seahawks adjusted spent $17.4 million. That was with Marshawn Lynch. So they really needed a Marshawn Lynch. So we do kind of have a thing with Saquon Barkley can potentially lead us to a championship. It's been done before, but more recently we've seen it with three-headed monsters. We've seen the 49ers get there. We've seen the Chiefs do it. We've seen the Patriots with the Garrett Blunts of the world and things like that. The Eagles three-headed monster with Jay Ajayi and things like that. So, the Giants are definitely not in bad shape, and the minimum any team has spent adjusted was $2.9 million. That was the Denver Broncos. So a little bit of an anomaly there with the highest paid quarterback and the lowest paid running backs. Then you have wide receivers, and I was a little bit surprised here. The average is 24.1. The Giants are spending $26.5 million. Now, I don't expect the Giants to win the Super Bowl this year. There are going to be some, salaries that, change. Obviously, that goes without saying. The highest adjusted was $31 million. And that's a whole bunch of money to spend. And guess who did that? The Broncos. So they were very much of an outlier when winning the championship there. I was almost ready to delete them. And then the least adjusted was $17 million. So there's very low variance there. It's 17 to 31, even though it's not that, it's pretty high, like 14 million as far as percentage. Not really that much, so it's around 12%, 12 to 13% of the cap, and the Giants are around 13. So we're spending a little bit more, but yeah, there's that. Tight ends, the average is 12.7, and the Giants are only spending 10.1. Next year, it's going to go up with Evan Engram, but that's overall solid. I think that the Giants are allotting the right amount of resources to the tight end position. The maximum, if you're curious, was $20 million spent to total on tight ends. That was the Seahawks. They spent a whole bunch of money, $20 million on their tight end position, and then the minimum was $2.3 million spent by the Ravens just the year before. And then so let's move on to offensive line. This is where the real big money is spent. $34 million on average, 34.68 to be precise. The Giants are spending a little bit more than $10 million more than that. Cutting Nate Solder is definitely going to help out with that, because I think he's like an $18 and $19 million cap hit this year. It would be the highest any team has spent on an offensive line to win the Super Bowl if the Giants win the Super Bowl this year. The minimum was $22 million. So you obviously need a lot of resources allocated to the offensive line. I noticed that a lot. And as far as the total offense, the average is 96.5. adjusted, obviously, and then the Giants are spending $107 million, so that's around $10 million more. Let's say around 12% more than any team usually spends on the offense. So it's something to be concerned about. The highest was $112 million allocated, and that was the Seahawks back in 2013. So let's move on to the defense. How the Giants spending their money on defense and interior defensive line. It's similar to the offensive line. We're trying to build through the trenches, and it really shows. The average is 13.8. The Giants are spending $24.6 million. The highest being $20 million other than that, and that was the Ravens back in 2013. The edge is $40 million. That's a whole bunch of money spent by the Seahawks. So the Seahawks, Ravens, and Broncos are really like a statistical anomalies here. You had the lowest at $8 million, so there's a high variance here. I think that's the Patriots in 2014 that only spent $8.4 million, and then last year the Chiefs spent $9.1 million. So you don't really need that much money at edge. It's not really a consistent pattern with these teams. Linebacker, same thing. The Giants are spending around $26 million that position, mainly due to a Blake Martinez. But the average is 17.7, so we're spending a little bit more there. May not get the production, but that's not we're not here talking about the actual players. We're talking about the actual money that we're spending. Spending a little bit less than average on safety, around half the average on safety. But Jabril Peppers, we're not really allocating that many resources towards there. So I definitely see the Giants, allocating and potentially going after a Justin Simmons or something like that, and spending big bucks on a safety, because it seems like safeties are really important. Your Earl Thomases of the world and things like that. Take a look at these, Super Bowl champions. They've had good safeties. Devin McCourty. I guess we're just naming guys, because we know that they won the Super Bowl. But, you need a good safety position. And then cornerback, we're spending a little bit more than average. 12.9 is average. We're spending $18.7 million. Still wouldn't be the most. The most is $22.6 million adjusted, and that, I believe, was the Patriots. So good teams build through their cornerbacks and their safeties as well. We've seen some mixed results here. There's definitely not a solid line of reasoning. As far as overall defense, the Giants are spending a little bit more, actually, believe it or not, than the average defense. They're spending, as far as like percentage of the cap, the Giants are spending like 99% of their cap this year. So we're gonna see how the Giants do this year. A bunch of Super Bowl teams, they didn't really spend a whole bunch towards the cap. I'm taking a look, like 92, 82, 82, 90, 89. And the Giants are spending 97% of their cap right now. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see. There's some interesting findings here. There's no overall solid pattern, I would say, besides, you spend on your offensive line, don't spend on running back, and pay your safeties. Get a solid safety or two, get a solid cornerback, pay one of them. I'm looking at these teams. A lot of them are paying one cornerback to do a solid role. We have that with James Bradbury. And overall, I'm probably may do this again for the teams that didn't make the Super Bowl and didn't do it. But we were seeing overall, there's very high variance for defense. The key is to pick your spots and see which guys are valuable and which guys are not. And so the Patriots, for example, in 2015 or 2016 when they won, this is when they beat the Falcons. They were spending 3% of their cap on interior defensive line, but then more towards 10% on their edge and linebackers. Then we also seen teams constructed like the Ravens that are spending just a bunch of money everywhere, but more money towards their, the defensive line, but not much at safety and cornerback. And then also with teams like the Chiefs spending low in the defensive line, but more relative on different positions and things like that. Overall, the offense was spent more on the defense. Defense is more, I noticed people are more hesitant to pay certain guys. It seems like the young defensive players usually do better. For some reason, the young unpaid guys, take a look at 40% of the cap on defense, and then more higher, around 48% for the offense. So it's definitely interesting to see. It's an interesting case study. I'm not going to have this file anywhere, but it definitely was interesting to dive into the details. The Giants are relatively interesting spending. They spent a lot on the offensive line. Interesting to see where they spent all their money. But obviously, it's going to change the next couple years when we're expecting to win championships. Well, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye, guys.